Good morning, Corky here. I want to talk about travel, and there's several points to this, so I'll try to keep this video as short as possible. Why it's important to travel. Mark Twain once said that travel was absolutely death to prejudice. In other words, travel, I don't exact quote, but anyway, that prejudice is destroyed by travel. And there was a strong statement that he made that describes what happens to you when you do travel. Most of us, a lot of us, grew up in a location. In my case, I was born in Atlanta and then was raised in North Carolina. And for the majority of my life, I never traveled more than just a few states, with the exception of, a couple of 3 trips. When I was a boy, my dad took me to New Orleans to see my Aunt Mary and Uncle Albert, and then sometimes I'd go to South Carolina with my dad on a work trip. Other than that, Atlanta to Greensboro, North Carolina, and that Highway 85 and that whole thing, it's pretty much the only places I'd been. I remember when I first became a Christian, there was an old preacher named Pappy Joe Campbell in the Pentecostal Holiness Church, and he stopped by Asheboro where I was going to church, my first church experience after becoming a believer. And he invited me to go around the world with him. He traveled around the world every year, and he said if I'd carry his suitcases, then I could go with him. And I was holding down my first real job in a tread urban mill, and I was a little nervous about going around the world, and so I didn't accept the invitation. Often regretted that I didn't accept it. Sometime later, I considered joining up with Youth of the Mission organization, and the first application form that you get in those days was a burial form, which meant that if I was to die on foreign soil, that they would not have to pay to have my body shipped home, but I'd be buried there, wherever I died. Well, that scared me too. I don't know why I was so afraid of traveling so much, because I had broken laws and did dope and shoplifted and vandalized houses and things like that, and I wasn't afraid to do that. Why was I so afraid to travel? And so it would be many years later before I would get an opportunity to really go, across the United States and then even into other parts of the world. Now, I'll soon be 68 years old, and my travels have revolved primarily around the United States. I've been in almost all the states in the United States. I've never been to Canada or Alaska. But from there, my travels primarily were to Latin America. My wife, Kimberly, her world travels have revolved around primarily Europe, Great Britain, and then she's been to other parts of Europe as well, and she's also been to Asia. So, the first thing that I want to say is that none of the places that I have been have I only gone for my own benefit, my own interests, Most of the places that I've traveled to, I was invited to go. The exception would be vacation trips. And vacation trips, you would choose a place. Your family would choose a place. And so, but for the remainder of that, I didn't have any control over whether I was going to Latin America or whether I was going to Europe or wherever, because when I first started traveling to other places, uh, I was getting invitations to Latin America. I was not getting uh, invitations to Europe or Asia. Um, so this is just the way it's turned out. Uh, Kim has primarily been in Europe, and I have primarily been in Latin America, and that's just Providence. Um, I have a lot of friends who've never traveled outside their own state. I have some friends who never traveled outside their city. Uh, and there's a great deal of prejudice that exists because people don't get out much. So the first thing of a benefit of travel is educational reasons. We want to learn about different parts of the world. We cannot form our opinions and our convictions based on what we read in the newspaper, what we see on the news. I remember when I first went to the Amazon, I had always heard that deforestation was taking place in the Amazon jungle, and it was hurting our ozone layer. And you never know about these things. Some people brand them as liberal um, propaganda. But every vehicle that I met as I was going into the Amazon in my first experience in Peru, um, the only vehicles that were coming out of the jungle were log trucks. And it was very clear, and I saw it with my own eyes, the tremendous deforestation that was taking place as they were cutting the trees out of the mountains. And so I know this to be a fact because I saw it. Um, so I don't depend upon media to tell me what's true or what's not true unless it's about somewhere I'm not going to get to go to. So it's an educational benefit of travel. Secondly, there's spiritual benefits to travel. The last words of Jesus Christ, Commander in Chief, were go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. So go means a change of location. So we need to be going because Christ told us to go. And that was my motivation. In my very first trip, I couldn't afford plane tickets because I was a pastor and then working low-paying jobs. So I didn't have savings to buy a plane ticket to go somewhere because I wanted to go. But I knew that I would need to start going. So about 1996 or 7, I was serving in a church in Tennessee, and they told me to put my name in the hat, and that when some construction person uh, can't get off work to go on a building trip, uh, that I would get to go in his place and use his ticket. And that was how I first got to go to Honduras. And my father-in-law went with me on that trip, and it was a life-changing experience. Um, I'm not particularly good at building. I can't really hammer well, and that was not my thing. So I took my guitar, and that is my thing. And so I got to sing with the children at night on the porch and things like that. Um, so it was a great spiritual benefit. Um, being with the people of Honduras, particularly on the Caribbean coast, with these people groups, sleeping in their villages at night, um, they impacted my life. I don't know if I gave them very much, but they gave me an awful lot. So after the Honduras trip, then, more and more invitations start coming up. And I recommend, if you're a church person and you want to go to another country, find a church that does a lot of mission trips every year. Put your name in. Tell them I'll go as a substitute if somebody can't get off work. It's a very basic idea, but do it, even if it's not the church you attend, because when we went to Honduras, we actually went with another church, and only a few from our church went. So the spiritual benefits of travel. Also, it's my belief in spiritual geography, is that different parts of the world uh, have spiritual residue from events that have happened in the past, and there's different spiritualities that exist in the country, like Buddhism and Hinduism in Asia, uh, you know, um, voodoo in Haiti, uh, and other spiritualities like Native American spirituality in the western states of the U.S. as well as the eastern. And when you go and you immerse yourself in these other communities, um, you learn from different spiritualities. Uh, that's very important. I spent 15 years in and out of Native America up until a couple of years ago, and my life was deeply impacted by Native American spirituality. Um, Also, you know, there's cultural benefits uh, that you experience along the way, food, music, and art, uh, and so you need to move around in the world so you can experience these things. Now, I did quite a bit of traveling between like 96 and 1996 and 2020. So for 25 years or so, I was always going somewhere. In the last 15 years, I traveled immensely. So I've been to Uruguay and Colombia and Bolivia. Um, I've been, like I said, to Honduras, and I've been to England, Great Britain, Wales, and so, and then a lot of travel in the States. And so I'm pretty tired. I'm retired now, and I'm not really looking for another trip right now. But what has happened is my children have followed our example, um, and they travel. So that my daughter Emma just went to Israel a couple of weeks ago, and she's comfortable with that. She had already been to Mexico when she was young. She'd been to Uruguay when she was young, and so uh, it was natural for her to want to travel, and she will continue to do so more and more. Um, and so, uh, we want to set an example for our children, not just to be homebodies, hermits, and staying around the house all the time. Although home is where the heart is, no question. But we want to set an example for our children, so that they don't develop prejudicial ideas about immigrants and foreign people that we may come in contact with, so that we'll have some kind of home key to understand exactly the world we live in. And I think these are just really important things. And even though I'm not traveling much right now, especially the pandemic, I go very few places now. I'm a little small hick town in Alabama, and I maybe go to the grocery store once a week, pick up the kids at school a couple of days. Uh, so I'm not really looking to go many other places, but for about 25 years, I really rolled, and it was a great benefit to me, and I reflect on it every day. Um, so just some thoughts, and please subscribe and comment, and y'all have a blessed Sunday. See you.